Hello everybody. Welcome to the January Lunch and Learn for the League of Women Voters of Monterey County. If you've been like me, we've been spending a lot of time on the internet looking at fire maps in Southern California, looking to see if our friends' houses are, what side of the fire line they are. It's a little bit unnerving to think that there are winds that are generated not by hurricanes, but by other sources going 100 miles an hour, and instead of rain pelting you, hot embers are coming at you. So this is unfortunately the world that we live in, and just by the fickle nature, we've had a wet Northern California and unfortunately a very dry Southern California. Today we're going to be hearing about the Big Sur Land Trust. The executive director is here, Jeannette Tuitele-Lewis, and if anybody is thinking in the long term, it's this group. I'd like to introduce Beverly Bean, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Dennis. My acquaintance with the Big Sur Land Trust began when I participated in their annual spring fundraiser called the Race for Open Space. The Big Sur Land Trust opens a number of their pristine, conserved lands to runners and hikers for several weeks to support their mission. Many of these properties are available to the public only by special permit. Steve and I made our first hike to the Middeldorf Preserve, a beautiful property donated by one of our long-term members, Harriet Middeldorf, and her late husband, Arthur. What a great way to raise money and get people outdoors. The Race for Open Space and many other projects were started under the leadership of our speaker, Jeannette Tuitele-Lewis. Jeannette joined the Big Sur Land Trust as executive director in 2014. She holds degrees in botany and forest science, and previously worked for 8 years for the Sierra Foothills Conservancy. And when I asked her how to pronounce her name, she told me she was of Samoan descent and of royal Samoan descent. So please welcome Jeannette Tuitele-Lewis.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start with a big thank you. I just want to thank all of you for the important work that you're doing in our communities. We know that civic engagement has never been more important. Our democracy is, we can never assume that it's going to always be here for us. And so I just appreciate all the important work that you do in terms of just being informed and commenting and getting yourselves out there and making recommendations. Because I can tell you that for the last several decades, that whenever I have a question and I'm not quite sure how I stand on an issue, I go check out to see what the League of Women Voters says, and that is always helpful for me. So just want to say how much I appreciate all of your work, so thank you. So I am going to just provide a bit of an overview on Big Sur Land Trust, and I'm assuming that most of you know a bit about our organization, but I'm just going to touch on just giving a very brief introduction. And then I'll dive into some of our current projects and what's ahead for us. So Big Sur Land Trust, we started in 1978. We were the result of 7 families that came together in Big Sur that were concerned about increasing development. At that time, there was so much development happening on the coast. This was also a time when the coastal plan was underway. And there were a lot of folks engaged around really wanting to be able to help shape what our future coastline looks like. And particularly in Big Sur, just given its very sort of uniqueness and really that just majestic landscape. there was concern that, one day it could look like, Malibu or something. And so we better find some solutions here, and they should be locally based. And so forming a land trust was the solution that these individuals in the community came together to form. And really thinking that this was a way to see how voluntary private land conservation could also complement some of the same goals that both the county and the state were looking at in terms of land conservation. So we started out really focusing in Big Sur. Since that time, of course, we had moved up the coast and started doing some work in Marina, around the Marina Dunes region. We did a couple of projects. Some of you might be familiar. We've got like San Carlos Beach. Who would have known it was going to be a golf museum, and now it's this beautiful open space that everybody uses to, scuba dive. So we did a bunch of small projects like that, and then we also started doing work in Carmel Valley, and eventually our work spread out into the Sierra de Salinas range and the Gabilan range. So we are now a Monterey County-wide organization. So our purpose is to inspire love of land across generations, conservation of our unique landscapes in Monterey County, and access to outdoor experiences for all. We have gone through some pretty significant changes, particularly in the last 10 years in terms of our organization's mission has really broadened. A lot of our focus is really around healthy lands, healthy people, and healthy communities. And when we can find projects where those three things really intersect, that's really a sweet spot for us. So this year we are celebrating 47 years of conservation. We have so much to be proud of. We have about 45,000 acres under conservation that the Land Trust has been involved in, either through land purchases, supporting projects, doing sort of brokering projects, transferring projects to state parks, regional parks, as well as holding on to some lands, and then also in working with voluntary landowner agreements on conservation easements. So we own and manage currently about 10,000 acres. And the rest of the land that we've conserved are either they're owned by other entities, and some of those are monitored annually, such as our private land conservation easements, of which we monitor. Many of the other lands are either already in state parks' hands, or regional parks, or city parks. So we have three general programs. We have our land conservation program, which is our land acquisition. That's kind of our land protection that most people associate our work with. We also have our planning and nature-based solutions. So this is, for us, often acquisition is step one in a project, because we look for opportunities to restore land, to bring trails and access when that is suitable for that property, how we enhance the conservation values of the land. So there's a lot of planning. Sometimes we've got large other sort of green fuels reduction projects and other things that we're doing. So that's part of our planning, our nature-based solutions. And many of you probably know Rachel Saunders. She is a long-time staff member and an incredible advocate for this work here in our region, and she runs the land conservation program. We also do some policy and advocacy work, mostly at the state level. So I serve on the board. I'm the most immediate past chair for the California Council of Land Trusts, which includes about 80 land trusts in the state of California. And so we weigh in very heavily on conservation policy at the state level. We also were one of the main backers of the most recent Proposition 4 and raised money for the statewide campaign on Prop 4 as well, which is our most recent climate resilience bond and natural resources bond. So we're very engaged in work on that front. I also serve on the National Advisory Council for the Land Trusts in the U.S. There are about 1,100 of us, so I also have opportunities to weigh in on federal policy. There are 3 of us that sit on that are from California, 2 of us, I think there's a third coming on. and we really sort of weigh in on what are some of the issues that we see at the state level that we want to see bring forward on federal priorities for conservation. We also have our land stewardship, and this is habitat management and restoration. There is, in our mission, we could not protect a single acre more, and we would still have an incredible amount to do with all of the land restoration work that we have, and really trying to make sure that our lands are staying healthy, that we are looking for ways to increase always biodiversity of our landscapes, that their ecosystem functions are still, that they're still able to have the same ecosystem functions of which we've identified are important for those lands when we first protected them. And also really thinking about how do we enhance climate resilience during this time as well on our lands. So there's never a shortage. I always say, during the winter months, I'm always bracing for storms and waiting for that call and seeing what we're going to have to clean up. And then during the summers, I'm like, on edge about where the next fire is, because whenever those things happen in our community, we are very busy. We are very busy. And we're often coordinating with other entities around that as well. So I mentioned that we have preserve access as well, and infrastructure, so a lot of maintenance that we have to do on our lands, and that's why long-term support and membership is really important. Those unrestricted dollars really help us take care of those lands that we have. And then conservation easement monitoring, and that is our obligation. When we hold a conservation easement on a private property, essentially it means we own the development rights of that property, and it is our job to go out and to make sure that those conservation values are maintained over time. So that is also part of our promise and commitment to how we do our conservation work. We also have our community programs, and our community programs includes our youth camps, our service learners. So many of you have probably heard we've had to date over 1,200 youth come out to enjoy our camps. This is on our nature preserves. Occasionally we will partner with other organizations and do additional field trips. But it's been a wonderful opportunity to get many youth out, and this program has been going on for about 12 years. And when we started it, there was very few folks that were working in places like in the Salinas Valley and really bringing youth out. And that's really where we began, was really identifying the need for young people who didn't have access to the outdoors in the same way that some of the youth have here on the peninsula, and really getting them outside to enjoy parks and open space. We also have our service learners. So each year we have, up to sometimes 30 service learners, college students that are doing their hours with Big Sur Land Trust. It's incredible, and it's a wonderful thing. And I've had people say, like, that's great, you have so much free labor. I'm like, well. So it's amazing. These young folks are so excited and looking for ways to use their time and their talent and to really learn about their outdoor spaces. And it also, as you can imagine, requires a lot of our team to really help provide and set up projects and track students. And so we've been lucky to have a really great program, and to be a recipient of all these students that are coming from CSUMB and Middlebury and Monterey Peninsula College that are really interested in our work and growing in conservation. There's a lot of hopefulness in that. We also have our volunteer program, where we have a large number of volunteers. We have so many different types of opportunities, as you can imagine. We get people out on the land, and there's never any shortage of work to do. However, what we found is that I think, part of what we recently did was brought on Tanya Ruth, who I'm so excited about. Tanya Ruth is like, I've been trying to figure out how to hire her for 7 years. So when I finally figured out a way to bring her on to the Land Trust, I was so excited. And she was brought on to really help expand this program, because one of the things that we found is, we have a lot of people who are looking to volunteer, and yet volunteer management itself also requires a lot of staff time to really place people in positions and make sure that they're happy with the kind of volunteer work that we're doing. We want to honor people's time and really make sure that we've got projects and opportunities such as more stewardship projects. And so that's something that, that we're excited about honing in a bit more with Tanya, as well as with Jenny Jaycox, which some of you may know as well. And she's been doing a wonderful job in getting that sort of moving in the last couple of years. We also have our hikes program, and this is a way for people to get out and enjoy our lands. It used to be that you needed to be a member or a donor of Big Sur Land Trust to get out on our lands, but you know, when COVID happened, we really recognized there was such a need for people to be outside, and that's when we took off that restriction. So now actually anybody can get out onto our lands when the preserves are open, but they do have to go through the website because we have to be able to track everyone. We're not a parks management entity, so we just need to be able to know who's out there on our lands. And that's also a way to bring in new folks and get people excited about the work and reduce barriers to access beautiful spaces. So the Carmel River Floodplain Restoration Environmental Enhancement Project, CR-free. Many of you have heard about this project for a long time and are probably wondering, oh my goodness, what is happening with this thing? This is this project has taken over a decade to really get moving. In part, it's a highly complex project. We're looking at, we had 22 permitting agencies involved. We might as well be trying to build a Walmart in the floodplain, as far as I'm concerned. It is really that complicated to get this project done. That being said, we are getting very, very close. We are awaiting a FEMA grant for $27 million. This has become about a $60 million project. And the FEMA grant would essentially help us cover all the remaining construction costs that we have for the project. This is a project in partnership with the county. And so we are waiting on that. There has been, the last holdup was a holdup between a federal agency and a state agency. 18 months later, they couldn't agree on something. And so we finally got that moving, thank goodness, with the help of Senator Laird and Panetta's office and the Secretary of Natural Resources. We're able to get things moving. So this is just sort of our world, right? This is what we do. We have these big, long-term, very ambitious projects, and sometimes they just take a lot of time and tenacity to push them through. But our hope is that it will begin construction next year. Of course, these were just pictures of floods from 98 and 95, and this was really sort of the beginnings of our thinking around, wow, we really need to figure out a solution here, how we're going to reduce the flooding impacts to those businesses and homes to the north, and really help to restore the river. The outlook, or what we're hoping to accomplish here with the construction, is the removal of several levees that would then flood in a 5-year event, flood onto the south end. We'd have these, we'll have these shallow but wide channels of which the water will move through. It includes a causeway building under Highway 1 that will reconnect the river with the lagoon during these flood events, and then creating walking trails so that folks can move between these different landowner jurisdictions. And we also have a agricultural preserve that will be lifted up out of the floodplain that really honors the legacy of that landscape with the Odellos there. And so that is the vision. Now there's lots going on. We're connected to Caltrans, we're connected to state parks, as well as MPRPD. So there's a lot of coordination that's happening between the agencies around that. And also mitigation as well. So there's for any impacts that we have. So like I said, we might as well be building the Walmart here. So another project I want to highlight is planting a dream at Carr Lake, and we are so excited about this project. So this is a project that's been underway for about 7 years now. We purchased this property in 2017. So just to give you a bit about Carr Lake, I'll just provide a bit of a background. So Carr Lake was part of a series of 7 lakes that went all the way up through Salinas, up through Castroville, and then out towards the coast. And Carr Lake was the largest of all of the lakes. And it was drained in the early part of the 20th century. It was the last to be drained. It was drained for agriculture. A reclamation ditch was put in, and they drained it. We can kind of think of it like a shallow wetland, but imagine this area filled with wildlife and birds at that time. And so the property has been in ag since then, and the city has grown up around it. So if you ever fly over Salinas, or you drive, or you're driving over Highway 101, and you look out and you say, wow, there's all this incredible farmland right in the middle of the city. How strange, right? That is because that is the low-lying basin. And you have 3 creeks, which are now channelized ditches, but technically it's the Gavilan, the Alisal, and the Natividad creeks that flow into the watershed down into this low-lying basin that still floods on occasion. And unfortunately, it tends to flood some of the more poor areas, such as the mobile home park nearby. So when this opportunity came up to purchase 73 key acres within this floodplain, we thought, this was an opportunity. The community had been wanting a park in there for a long time, but we always, we only work with willing sellers. And so when the opportunity came up to purchase a piece of it, we said, let's do it. And of course, this is a very different project than anything we had done in the past. It's a more urban project. We're surrounded by we're surrounded by housing. There's a school right there. It's different than some of our more kind of remote properties. And one of the things that continued to sort of ring with us, or resonate with us, that was really important, is how often we heard from the Salinas Valley youth that would come out and visit our lands out on the coast and say, how come I don't have a place where I can be in nature, where I live? And really thinking about how do we bring nature back into the city, and really create those opportunities. Salinas is our most populous city in the county. It also has the lowest park ratio, one of the lowest park ratios. I mean, on average, it's about 1,000 acres per 10,000 residents. And Salinas has like a 2.8, and within certain parts of the city, it's more like 1.8, of which you can actually access. It's very low. And the median age is like 27 and a half. It is a very young city, many young families there. And the fact that there really isn't much park space is really tragic. And so thinking about how we, as a conservation organization that knows the importance of all of the healthful benefits that come with parks and open space, how can we bring that to a community, really work with the community to make sure that we understand what the community wants as well, because we can bring certain types of skills, but there are a lot of things that we don't know. So we've been learning with public health, with affordable housing, and all these groups, and how we create this. What's really I find really exciting is that we've had over 6,000 residents engaged in the planning process. And the first part of the park, it's about 6.5 acres. It is a neighborhood park. So imagine you have all the folks around the community saying what they want. They want slides, and they want play equipment and basketball courts and all these like really fun recreational amenities that come. And so we said, well, that could actually happen out of the floodplain here. But we also have these 67 acres of floodplain habitat that really are going to be very restricted in terms of what can happen there and what we'd like to see. And how often we heard people just say, how about we just have trails? And even to some folks' surprise, and maybe we need a space where it's only for the animals and the people can't go there. And so that is part of our 67-acre restoration component of the park. And so our park, the Carr Lake Park, is going to The neighborhood park is going to be opening this spring. We are so excited. We're working with the city of Salinas. The park is going to be transferred to the city of Salinas. And then the 67 acres for the restoration area, that is also going to begin in late spring, and we'll start that second phase. This is about a $35 million project. We've raised about $30 million for the project so far, and we are now looking at things like our long-term management and support, because continuing to make sure to see that that restoration is successful is going to be really important for us, and keeping communities engaged around that, looking at starting a Friends of group, because it's important to have communities really engaged and communities that are funded to be able to do the work. It's important work. So this shows you a little bit in terms of the park, which is kind of at the bottom where you see all those trees. And then, of course, the floodplain area up to the top of the slide there. Okay. Beautiful vision of what it could look like later, right? This is an artistic rendering. I'm now going to talk about a more recent acquisition that Big Sur Land Trust completed at the end of the year before last, so it's about a year old, is Basin Ranch. So this is about a 5,000 acre ranch, 5,100 acres, north of Arroyo Seco, deep Carmel Valley. We are very excited to work on this project. So this Basin Ranch is part of the Sierra de Salinas range. That is the range that is, so if you think about Toro Park, that would be sort of the far north and west end, right, the west end. And then as you move down the Salinas Valley, that whole range, as you see, that goes between Carmel Valley and the Salinas Valley, that is all the Sierra de Salinas range. Really critical wildlife corridor habitat. This is sort of at the south end of that. And Big Sur Land Trust, along with other land trust and conservation organizations, have been working to piece together a bunch of ranches along that whole section to keep that corridor wild. And so I'll show you a map a little bit later that can kind of give you a sense of this project in that context. I'd also share that we are doing co-management with the Esselen Tribe of Monterey County on this land, which is another really wonderful partnership that we have. We work with many groups, including tribes, and really thinking about how we manage land together. So the next property I want to share about is the Tarpey Flats HIS parcel that we purchased last year as well. That is 84 acres. So if you are starting to head towards Salinas, so actually the best way to describe where this is, it's a little bit past the airport, but right across from where the restaurant Tarpey's is. There's 84 acres back there that was, they were trying to develop for a commercial development there. And so we had contacted the landowners. We occasionally will, in prime areas where we think are really important to see in conservation, we'll occasionally flood the area with the landowners with letters saying, if you're interested. And we did get a call back from the HIS brothers, and we're able to purchase that land, and we are actually working on a land back transfer with the Ohlone, Costanoan, Esselen Nation. During the airport construction, they found human remains and other cultural remnants, and this is an important area for the tribe, and the tribe is asked to have a place for themselves. So we are working with the Ohlone, Costanoan, Esselen Nation on this project together. So the next project I'd like to talk about is our brand new project that is just in the works. So you may have heard just a couple weeks ago that we worked with the Trust for Public Land to be able to, the Trust for Public Land, technically they acquired the 840 acre Farini Ranch. This is a beloved property that has been zoned for about 180 homes, and frankly, the kind of homes that most folks that need houses can't really afford around here. So we and it's in a really important wildlife corridor, a critical corridor along the Tuitele-Lewis. And so as Big Sur Land Trust started looking at this land for conservation, we knew, this is going to be a big lift. And when it first came on the market, it was like $36 million or something. And with all of the other big projects we had going on, we knew that we needed to bring in another partner to help us with this project. And we've got a great relationship with Trust for Public Land, and so bringing them in to help us with this. So essentially what we've done is we've bought ourselves time. We've taken it off the market, and now we have 2 years to raise about $15.5 million to close the deal. So we're going to be working towards a campaign and things moving forward. So our hope is that we're going to be able to do it. We know that this is a really important, this is the Lupin Field, so, and sort of the quintessential Steinbeck country sort of property that everybody views as they're driving on Highway 68. Between much of it is along the road, it is all within the view shed. It's really critical for wildlife, as I mentioned. So one of the things that I shared about at the wildlife corridors, you can see how, so some people have asked, like, so do you just like sort of randomly just, protect land? I'm like, well, it's not really like that. We actually have a very thorough process in making decisions around what lands, but we also, because we only work with willing sellers, we are also, have a sense of the opportunistic there. But for many of our landscapes, we really look at these longer term plans. So just to give you a sense here, you can see Basin Ranch all the way south. And that whole stretch we've been piecing together with partners. So all of these projects we either commented on, we coordinated with in some way to help make all of these, to work together on these properties. So for example, Runna Creek, we worked with Runna Creek and also got them engaged with the Esalen tribe of Monterey County on that property when they first came in to look at that. We have conservation easements there. We also own the Arroyo Seco property that's there to the south. We partnered with the Nature Conservancy to protect the Dorrance Ranch up here as well, which is the big sort of large peak there at the Dorrance Ranch along the Tuitele-Lewis. And of course, we've worked with Toro County Parks, a big portion of Mark's Ranch, which we purchased. We transferred a large portion of that to be part of the backcountry into Toro, and we still retain a little piece there at the Mark's Ranch. So Farini Ranch, as you can see, really connects this all the way up into Fort Ord. And together with all of this sort of parks complex here, we could connect 20,000 acres of conservation lands with this deal. So it's really important that we maintain that. The other thing I'll share is that we have been told by our partners at California Department of Fish and Wildlife that this stretch along Highway 68 is their highest priority for Monterey County in terms of wildlife. And the numbers of issues that they're having in terms of collisions and the loss of wildlife on roads. So that's a priority for them. It's a priority for us. I can share that a couple months ago when we had a really warm streak, it was a fall day and it got really hot. Just within a short stretch of Farini Ranch connecting into Fort Ord, I saw 3 dead coyotes on the road, which was pretty disturbing in such a short distance. But that whole area, particularly around the San Venancio, where a lot of the animals are moving through, we'd really love to see that both protected and enhanced for conservation there and wildlife. So just a few of the things that you'll see. Big Sur Land Trust was actually involved when the Farini Ranch was being proposed. We were involved in the advocacy work around a wildlife corridor there to really document all the wildlife that was moving through the area, which did end up reducing the footprint of the development. So we do have documentation and work. So this is another example where our work is long term. We look at areas, we know they're important, we do what we can to identify the resources there, and slowly when opportunities come, we work towards acquiring lands. So once land is conserved and once either it's constructed for restoration or the planning is in place, then it moves on to our stewardship department, and that's really where we do the long-term management, habitat enhancement. Also, we have a lot of fuels reduction projects. Right now, many of you have probably heard that we were thankfully awarded, Monterey County was awarded through NOAA a almost $72 million grant for our region through the National Marine Sanctuary, which is amazing. Really focused on climate change. There are about 20 plus organizations involved. It touches so many different agencies and cities and organizations. So we're really excited. We have about $5 million of that in stewardship projects for lands that we own and manage. A lot of that is looking at cultural burns with tribes. It's also looking at fuels reduction projects, different ways that we're looking at improving the resiliency of our lands for our communities. And so something we're very excited about. We also have a giant pollinator project that's going on right now at Mark's Ranch. I think it might be the largest milkweed sort of planting that's happened out there. So very exciting, looking at other ways that we can help improve pollinator habitat and just habitat in general. And then, of course, our Middeldorf Preserve. This is an example of ongoing maintenance and fuels reduction. Like I said, every time that there's a storm or something, I'm like, oh, okay, what are we going to have to fix now? So, maintaining roads for access, bridges. We've got always lots and lots of work to do on that front. And then conservation easement and monitoring. This is out at Martin Dunes property, which is just north of Marina Dunes, sort of by the Cemex sand mine area, where we have some of the best examples of dunes habitat out there. We have been able to really deal with the ice plant out there, and we have incredible indigenous native plants growing there. So we're super excited, indigenous plants. And then we have our community programs. Like I mentioned earlier, we have our youth engagement, our outdoor camps. We've had our leadership camps. Our community programs also includes our service learning and our paid internships. So service learning is separate from our paid internships. Service learning, usually that's when the colleges are requiring a certain number of hours. We also have paid internships. And a lot of our paid internships are graduate students that are studying sciences, or right now we have a law student who's doing some work for us as well. So we offer those as part of the work that we do. And then preserve access and volunteer engagement, which I also mentioned earlier, is also something that is under our community programs. And in general, I think one of the things that it's important to keep in mind, and I think about this often as I work at the state level, about how land trusts are really essential partners in community. Land trusts as a whole have really received a lot of bipartisan support, which is sometimes unusual, especially nowadays, to get support. Everybody loves open space. Everybody wants to see their farmlands protected, their open spaces protected. Everybody wants parks. And so, it's actually a win-win for so many people, both across the nation, in the state. And this is really nicely aligned with the governor's 30 by 30 initiative, of which land trusts have played a really key partner for the state of California, which really is a goal to protect 30% of its lands by 2030. And we've really been able to take advantage of a lot of the funding that's coming down from the state to be able to support conservation in our region and look at these climate resilience projects. The last thing I'll say about that is also, we can no longer think of conservation as this sort of separate activity that happens outside of the other things that are going on in our communities. Land is the foundation of our work in conservation, but it's also the foundation of wealth and poverty. It's the foundation of oppression. It's the foundation of so many things that have happened over time in our communities. And so really thinking about how land can really be a solution to solving some of our biggest issues, the biggest issues of our time, particularly in the face of a changing climate, and the need for things like affordable housing and local food security and all of these things. We have to think about land as, and conservation is one part of that in all of the planning that we're doing. And it shouldn't be a this or that. There are ways to integrate, to really balance things to make it happen, because we need all of these things in our communities. Last thing I want to share is something that I think might be of interest to some folks. So one of the things that we've also been doing in partnership is working with a group called the Collaborative for Right Relations. One of the things that we recognized is that we had so many organizations in our region that were really interested in working with tribal partners, but they just didn't know where to start. And everybody was just so worried about making mistakes and doing the wrong thing, or and what we would hear from many of our tribal partners was, we are overwhelmed by the number of requests we're getting. Everybody wants to have, some land acknowledgement, or everybody wants, so one of the things we heard is there a way to bring the conservation groups together so that they could hear collectively from us? And so we worked with my good friend and colleague, Erin Myers-Nadera, at the Collaborative for Right Relations, who's locally based here, and really looking at how we design a program that could bring in all of these folks working in conservation that are working to build relationships with tribes, and going through both a learning journey around this and having and then being able to have a forum to work with different tribal groups and to learn from each other. And so we spent the first year and a half doing that. We are now in our second year and bringing on other additional leadership and groups. So it's really exciting, something I just want to throw that in because it's another example of where the Land Trust recognizes a need and is working in partnership with other groups to help make this all happen for our community. So thank you, and I am happy to take any questions that you have.
Well, I have one statement and one question. Part of the 7 roundabouts that Caltrans proposed, integral to that were the underpasses for wildlife. And now that project seems to be on hold, but it seems that there may be an opportunity to work with Caltrans to move at least that part of the project forward. My other comment is related to high fire hazard areas. We know what is going on in Los Angeles. The major area of Farini Ranch that was set for development was a high fire hazard area, and that seems to me to lower the overall value of that property. And is that something that TPL and you can pursue in terms of acquisition?
So it's already been purchased for a price, right? And actually the appraised value of the property was $26 million. And this is a high level appraisal by a very experienced appraisal. In part is because the property has all of its entitlements on it. And so when it has all of its entitlements, it must be valued at its highest and best use. Yeah.
I'm Hetty Eddy, and I just want to thank you and all your constituents for all the hard work you've done over the years for Farini Ranch. Janet and I have been involved in an organization, Land Watch, for a very long time, and that has been a priority to see what has happened with you taking over and the Public Land Trust. And I just want to thank you for all your hard work. That whole community thanks you. You just don't know. On a daily basis, the traffic is so terrible. We just figured, oh my gosh, another 180 homes up there. Oh, we would just leave it at 6 a.m. to try to get to Monterey by 8:30. So thank you.
Thank you. I hope it translates into fundraising from the community at least, right? Yes, yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm very happy to see, I've been a member since it started, and I'm very happy to see the movement to incorporate urban people. I think it started out as an elitist organization, no question about it. It was people with money who wanted to preserve the land.
Right.
And now it's moving to more community-based, and I'm very, very happy and grateful to see that. Thank you so much. The car project is really exciting.
Thank you, yeah.
And I like to see the fact that Toro Park, which is not a land trust property, but is very actively used by a lot of people from Salinas and Soledad and around that area. I have a quick question. A number of years ago, when Rancho San Carlos was being acquired by the preserve people, they were building a new road, and I was walking into Middledorf Preserve for the wildflower hike, and there was a new cut in the hillside, and one of the people on this hike walked over there and pulled out a 6-inch spear point. Perfect. I wanted to grab it away from her. I wonder, what is the policy on your lands for items like that, cultural items that are recovered?
So they need to come back to the land trust, and we would probably find another place to bury them. If anyone finds any objects on the land, they really need to come back, and we will work with the tribes on them.
You would bury a spear point instead of displaying it somewhere?
Well, we would see. We would see what the tribes want to do, and it's complicated because there are several tribes that claim that area, and so there's a whole process in which we would want to engage tribal partners around making some decisions, but that it would be really important that come back to the land trust. So, thank you.
How long are the easements? Are they time limited, or how long do they extend?
So conservation easements, in theory, are in perpetuity, or as we like to say, until the Republic falls. So, which some people are worried that could be next year. I shouldn't say that.
I'm curious as to whether the Packard Foundation has been a big supporter of yours.
Yes, the Packard Foundation has been an incredible partner. Not just the foundation, but the Packers themselves as family members. They have been supporters for the Farini product, not the foundation, but the individuals have helped with that, to help us move that along and to sort of get it to this first step, as well as with the Car Lake product. I would say that the Packard Foundation is one of probably 3 of the largest foundations, private foundations, that have contributed to the Car Lake effort. So them, along with the Bechtel and Laurel Foundation, as well as the Monterey Peninsula Foundation, also made a very substantial gift to the project. Yeah.
Do you have any worries as to what could happen to land trusts in general with the next administration coming in?
I think land trusts are going to be fine. Again, land trusts have always been able to get a lot of support, I think, across the political aisle. And even though I made my sort of joke earlier, I think that we are actually quite resilient through administrations. And I'd say that for a lot of California land trusts, so much of our funding is coming from the state of California, because the state of California is very unusual in terms of states. We have the largest conservation dollars. Obviously, I mean, we have the largest budget, but the amount of money that we put towards conservation would make many of my friends across the U.S. sort of drool in terms of the money that how we prioritize conservation in this state. And so a lot of our projects, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have any maybe potential challenges or hurdles with state agencies. What I will say for some of my colleagues across the nation who are outside of California, I think that there is concern, especially if you're reliant on more federal dollars. Some of the agencies that are natural resource agencies, it's hard to say. Many, are close to retirement. There is some concern there could be some brain drain at some of the top agencies, and that it might be hard to fill positions, and so that could impact projects. I mean, it's hard to know what's going to happen. One of the challenges that we did have back in 2016 in the last administration, new administration, was that when we were applying for a NOAA grant, we actually had to take out all language that referred to climate change in all of our applications, and really had to replace that with language around, extreme weather events. And, so sometimes that happens and we have to just be mindful of it, but it's a little bit like whiplash, especially in a state like California, where we're really encouraged to really push on the sort of climate resilience pieces, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how we navigate the differences in the mixed messages we're getting in terms of state funders and federal funders. So we'll see, but I remain hopeful, at least for us here in California, that we'll be able to continue to do the work, and let's just hope that we're able to push through our FEMA grant and we won't have any issues there either. So
Well, thank you very much, Jeannette. And we could end this like an old-time revival, and any of you have title to properties you'd like to donate, just step right up. Okay. Our next meeting will be in second Wednesday in February, and it will be over Zoom, so everyone will be getting a link. And again, thank you very much.